Welcome, Chris Perkins, to Dragon Talk. Hi, Chris.
Hi there.
Welcome back. We are excited to talk to you about Icewind Dale.
Anything.
Anything in general, but also Frost Maidens and how we can bake them.
What? This got a whole lot more interesting.
It's the reality television interview you've always wanted to do, Shelley.
Super excited.
So we know you're
Bachelor
totally
in Icewind Dale.
busy working on other things at this point, but let's go back in time to when you were working on Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden.
2
How
years
long
ago.
Was that 2 years ago?
About 2 years ago. It was a more innocent time.
Yeah, but it's interesting what this adventure is about and how it came out during an interesting time. Are you familiar with this little old British cartoon, Simon in the Land of Chalk Drawings?
No.
I always think of you,
No.
or I always think of him when I think of this product and you, because this was like way back when I was a kid and I used to watch Captain Kangaroo, and he was like this little like segment that they had on the show, and he would draw things on the chalkboard and they would come true. And so you're basically Simon, but
Not
with
too
words.
far off the mark. Yeah.
See, this started 2 years ago. You were working on this.
Yes. And, but let's see, we probably started even earlier, just like in terms of concepting and thinking about it and trying to figure out what we wanted to do and stuff like that.
Yeah. And traveling to Icewind Dale is interesting because it's very different from Baldur's Gate and Avernus, which was different from,
that's one of the keys is we're, not just to maintain our own interest in a product, but also we want to make sure that it's very different from anything we've done before.
Yeah.
It's really bringing something new to the game.
Yeah.
And Icewind Dale does that because not only is it a frozen wasteland and terrifying in its own way, but there are things mechanically that we can do in that kind of environment that's interesting when you're kind of closed off and dealing with the elements, blizzards and avalanches and all that kind of stuff. So it creates a very different table experience, I think.
Yeah. Last year we were in hell, which is very hot and sweaty. And now we're freezing in Icewind
frozen
Dale.
hell, basically, yeah.
Yes. Still the hell theme still.
And the
plays
horror
through.
comes from that theme of isolation and not knowing what's around the corner.
Yeah, and not having anybody who can just sort of swoop in and help you either. It's not like you can just call the authorities or the city watch in Waterdeep. You're kind of out there on your own, very exposed.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, Icewind Dale has a lot of history in D&D lore. Probably starting with R.A. Salvatore's Crystal Shard book. Was that a inspiration or at least a jumping off point?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in that book, the heroes of the story, this group of adventurers, have to save 10 towns from a terrible threat, really. The Crystal Shard is this evil artifact that falls into this wizard's hands, and with it, you can bring demons into the world and all kinds of evil shenanigans. But it's really up to this group to save what passes for civilization in 10 towns from being wiped out. And so when we did this story, Rime of the Frostmaiden, we wanted to preserve that idea. Only now you're the heroes. It's not the novel's heroes. It's a new group of heroes. 100 years later, 10 towns needs to be saved again. Dritz and his companions aren't up here right now. Who's going to do it? You!
But there's
Okay.
Yeah. The through line there that I really like is that was a ragtag group of people who came from other places, the companions I'm talking about, and then they all banded together, not necessarily by choice, but by necessity. And I think you kind of brought that to life in the opening chapters of this book, right?
Yeah, the same idea holds true. The characters, like most people who live in Icewind Dale, sort of come from all over the place and kind of land here for a variety of reasons. Some to escape a harsh environment, just like Dritz did when he came up from Menzo Baranzan. Others because they're just, they want to get away from it all, or they want to test their mettle against, the harshest land that they can find.
Or they're
see
wanted
how-
criminals.
or they're wanted criminals or pirates or, whatever. There's all kinds of reasons.
They just
And
need
when
a
you're
little
up
alone
here,
time.
when you're up here, in the cold, and there aren't many friendly creatures, the friends you do find, you have to hold close.
Yeah. When you find that trust, you want to be like, yes,
Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
in the circle of trust.
Yes. Otherwise, you become the wacky hermit who lives in the frozen woods and eats bark.
It is a slippery slope to get there. No pun intended. But
That's too bad. I kind of
When
wish
you
you
were-
intended it.
Yeah, that was good.
you could. That would have been good cover copy. I do appreciate, though, an Icewind Dale adventure is a dish best served cold. That has you written all over it. Did you write that?
I did. And I did that for the story Bible.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know it, but before we do a big campaign adventure like this, the first thing that we actually work on is a product called a story Bible. And that's an internal document, and a document that serves our partners who might be working on material that coincides with the release, like WizKids Shardle and Dragon Mini, for instance. So we pour some concept art and a few words into this story Bible, which is about 16 to 24 pages. And then we use that as a guide for everybody else who comes into the project after that point. So freelance writers can use it, artists can use it, our partners can use it. And so in coming up with the story guide, there's always a title page that has the code name of the project on it, and then a tagline. And the code name for Icewind Dale, many people don't know this, was Avalanche. And the tagline, of course, was "Adventure is a dish best served cold." And I just whipped that off.
And
It's
there it is.
One of my
There it is.
favorite, both of those story guides are incredibly valuable for many reasons, but this one in particular, I had a printed out copy of and had near my desk for many months, and it was it works really well as a guidepost for everyone who's working on D&D in any capacity, just to know what we're going towards.
Exactly. And it talks about things like, what are the themes of the story? Who are the major antagonists? What are the key conflicts? What is 10 Towns? Who are these ragged nomads who are wandering around in the tundra? Just kind of hitting the high beats.
Yeah.
With
And
that-
it's full of concept art too, which I
Oh,
always
tons
yeah,
of concept art.
that's
Yeah, it's
super
mostly art. Yeah. And the
I-
art, of course, is very important because it paints a picture of the mood and the atmosphere, and it inspires the artists who are actually doing the artwork in the printed books.
So I like the story Bible because it gives me a glimpse into your inner workings. And I sometimes think what? How do you come up with this stuff? And I know there's a lot of it is D&D lore, a lot of it's canon, but sometimes it kind of feels like you've just got the entire D&D sandbox is yours to just be I'm going to drop this one in here. I'm going to put
To an
this one here.
extent,
Where,
I like to play within a sandbox that's sort of got established boundaries, and
Yeah.
it's not like I decided that we were going to Icewind Dale. That was actually decided for me.
is that typical though?
It was for a number of years, a little less so now,
Okay.
but it's very typical because often we like to plug our stories into something that's either happening in the zeitgeist or
Right.
something that we've got planned on another front. Like Wizards has already announced that Dark Alliance is in development. That's a Icewind Dale video game.
Right.
We wanted this product to sort of be a way to reintroduce Icewind Dale to fans before that other game came out. And so that was kind of my marching orders. It's like, Chris, it has to be an Icewind Dale, and we wanted to sort of foreshadow, at least mood-wise or atmospherically, what we're thinking about doing with Dark Alliance. And then I went, okay,
That's enough.
I got my sandbox. I can work
I
in
got
that
some toys.
space, and off I go.
Yeah. I always equate that to a prompt you might get in a writing contest or something like that, where it's,
Yeah.
if you have infinite possibilities, sometimes that can stifle creativity. But all you need is that, here's one idea, and your mind starts jumping off, and
Yeah.
it almost is like a collaborative, RPG session.
Exactly. But another key thing, going back to the story guide just for a second, that quasi product serves is it's a test. Once the story guide is done and we send it out to people on staff and we send it out to partners, if the reaction is, then we probably know then that we're kind of doomed. We should maybe think about doing something else. But if people see that story guide and they get excited and they're like, yeah, Icewind Dale, let's go there. Let's dive. Woo, fun times. Get the toboggans. Woo, then that you can spend the next year and a half working on this thing and the interest won't die out.
Yeah. And I know lots of people who got that story guide who are excited about the themes of isolation, desolation, despair,
but also happiness.
Happiness.
There's a little bit of fun because you can't have despair and horror and not have something to accent it.
For sure. So what were some of the elements? First let's just live in the isolation and desolation for a while because that that is.
Because we are.
And overall, right, because we're all feeling that. One image that you always talked about when you talked about this story, which we codenamed Avalanche at the time, was this idea of not everybody's bundled up and it has so many, furs and hoods over their faces that you can see a figure on the horizon and you don't know what it is because it is basically masked to you. And you don't know if it's friend or foe. And that idea was really compelling to me. And, you mentioned how that was true where you grew up in Canada.
True enough. Yes. Yeah. When I was a kid, one of the favorite pastimes, of course, was to get our toboggans and go up to the big hill and then bomb down the hill. And it was like in the middle of a forest. So not only did you have to go down the hill, but you had to navigate trees and things to avoid hitting them. Nice. And then at the very bottom, there was a creek. And if you didn't go over the creek, like Evel Knievel, you went into the creek and might not have come back out.
Oh my God.
But I remember I had this image in my head once of walking to the hill by myself and seeing people on the hill I hadn't seen before, and I couldn't recognize who they were because they were all in parkas. And that kind of scared me for some reason. Walking up to these parka-clad figures and not knowing who they were, because I didn't know if they were my friends. I didn't know if they were the kids from the other street, or what have you.
Or Reagan nomads.
Or Reagan nomads, exactly. Or Yeti tykes in parkas.
Or three kobolds in a coat.
3 kobolds in a coat. So for some reason, I've always been nervous about that, and there is something about not knowing what's underneath all those furs that sort of gets you somewhere deep down inside of you and makes you give you a bit of a shiver or a shudder.
That's really interesting. Do you incorporate a lot of moments like that from your past, that just have stuck with you? We all have those moments, but do you incorporate a lot of them into the stories that you tell?
Yeah. I try to.
Very interesting.
And it's, I don't make it an obvious thing, and it might not even occur to me why I'm doing it. And then I think about it and it's like, oh, that's why I did that, because I was thinking about this thing, that happened to me when I was 14 or whatever.
Will we ever see any stories about a poor cardboard robot that fell over and cannot right himself? It needs a kind party of adventurers to pull him up.
Was that ever on?
Yeah, maybe one day. Shelley's referring to, for those who don't know, a story I told her about a Halloween costume that I had to wear one year, and it was basically a robot, and it was made out of stacked boxes covered in tinfoil. And my mother did a great job. The problem is the way the bottom box fit, it covered my knees. So when I fell over, I was unable to get back up and no one would help me.
It's just it's so heartbreaking. But I can't.
Those parka-clad kids from the next street over just wouldn't help you.
If I were writing D&D adventures, that would be in my story because it haunts me. That's one that I can't shake that story. You would see these poor little robot things
Yeah.
that's your job as an adventurer. Fix them, write them, please.
Maybe that's why you like Modron so much, Chris.
It could be. I do have a great deal of sympathy for Modrons, and I often think
That's
about
empathy.
how difficult their life must be because of the way they're built.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting, like hearing you talk about the people clad in parkas and not, knowing are they friend or foe? Because I mean, like, now we mostly see people with masks on, and I
Yes.
sometimes have like that same feeling, like, are you smiling? Like, I can't tell.
Yeah, exactly.
Boy, I am like really reliant on like people's
Yeah.
facial expressions to to communicate that.
Yeah,
And
I
I
mean-
find like me too, like I get a little resting bitch face now and again, like when I'm zoning off, that I'm trying to make a very conscious effort to say hello, like, and wave. Like, there has to be a way for you to know
Yeah.
I'm a
Gotta
friendly person.
Get the expressions to your eyes. Yeah, I'm always been like,
smile.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then if you try too hard, it looks like you want to eat the other person, and that's not
Yep.
good.
Again, a slippery slope. Yeah.
And part of it too, part of that whole idea was inspired when I started to think about Icewind Dale and my love for the John Carpenter film, The Thing. I would remember the Drew Struzan movie poster for The Thing, which of course has this tall figure backlit in a parka with light coming out of its face, so you can't see what it is. It's a very iconic image, and that reinforces the theme even further. It's like, okay, it looks like a man, kinda, but why is the light streaming out of its face? That's
Right.
not normal.
Like, yeah. Gives me the creeps.
And it's a
I
cold
have-
light.
I have a fear of like looking out a window at nighttime because like if I'm illuminated, if I know people can see
yeah.
me, and then like you hear something and it's like, I don't want to look. I'm so scared to look out a dark window.
Yeah. Or, sometimes when your mind plays tricks on you and you see a shape that looks like a human, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's just something else that in that moment, at the angle you saw it, kind of bore a human-like resemblance. It might have been a tree. It might have been a fire hydrant. It might have been just, some object that kind of picked up the light in a weird way. Like some people see faces in things that aren't really there, stuff like that.
I've been having I have an umbrella in my deck that in the wind the last few days has been blowing a lot, even though it's closed. And out of the corner of my eye, I'll see movement of what looks like a fabric. And 3 times over the last 2 days, I've been like, oh, is there someone in our back? Oh, no, it's just the umbrella.
Oh my God.
Simple things like that. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
all it takes.
So those are some things that people can start to incorporate when they're running, Icewind Dale. Some of these fears that all of us innately have of things that are, human-like or monster-like. You really do tap into all of those things and themes, throughout this story.
I do indeed.
So, and when we talk about this and like we talk about the horror a lot, is this particular adventure like is the horror something that the dungeon master can dial up or down, or is this like you go into this and know that there's going to be some real scary stuff happening?
I mean, yeah, there's a through line of horror, like little touchstones throughout the adventure that sort of are nods and winks to horror movies and certainly have that feel that we just talked about. But then there's also a lot of stuff in this adventure, because it is a big adventure, that isn't like that. And it's mainly meant to just kind of show all the facets of Icewind Dale. Like there's more to Icewind Dale than just shocks and chills. There are little creatures there called chewingas that are nature spirits, and they're benign. They exist in this environment and they have no problems. This little guy on the back cover, here's a little chewinga right there.
In a parka.
Exactly.
And again, from a
they
distance.
sort of show a Icewind Dale in a slightly different light. Like here's one of the reasons why people find this place magical and interesting to live in, because they might glimpse one of these small creatures popping around or riding on the back of an Arctic fox or something like that. These little moments help dispel the fear and kind of ground the setting and help bring Icewind Dale into a place where it does feel like a real ecosystem. That there's more to it than just the dark horror.
Yeah. And we talked about that a lot with Curse of Strahd, which we'll be talking about again when we talk about Curse of Strahd Revamped in a few weeks. But, to have a game or a campaign that has nonstop jump scares and, death and destruction, it can get so samey and the horror doesn't even really register anymore because it's all like that.
Exactly.
And so you need to have these moments of brevity or at least levity,
Release.
not brevity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or brevity.
Brief humor, levity. So that it brings the horror to full relief.
Exactly. And I think it's also worth painting Icewind Dale as, in a way, a very beautiful place. There are things that you see in the adventure, like these beautifully sculpted ice gardens that the Frost Maiden has made, or these migrating herds of reindeer, some of whom have luminous, like fluorescent horns. And it's quite there's beautiful imagery to be seen.
And then even the curse itself, the eternal winter, is beautiful with the aurora.
Yes, exactly. The aurora is meant to be like one of the most stunning visual sights you could possibly ever see. And growing up in Canada, I used to see them quite a bit.
Nice.
And I miss them. And so this story is a way for me to just sort of dive back into that memory too, and show that, in the terror of everything happening, there is a beauty to be seen.
That's important for everyone to think about right now.
Yes,
in the
good
world.
life lesson.
Yeah. That's part of it. If you're in a world and everything seems to be on fire, you look for reasons or solace in something, and beauty is one of those things.
So let's talk a little bit about the Frost Maiden. She's on the cover of both covers, the alternate cover by Hydro 74, as well as the painting by Tyler Jacobson in the standard cover. Very iconic. I remember showing this to my daughters, especially my oldest daughter who loves owls. And so being able to see this barn owl creature was really just immediately got interest and things like that. And I think it's true for a lot of people who were introduced to this during D&D Live in June. Where did this antagonist come from, and this specific visualization come from?
So Ariel, the Frost Maiden, has been around in the game in Forgotten Realms forever. Ed Greenwood created her as part of the pantheon of deities of the realms, and she embodies winter's indifference and cruelty, among other things. But to visualize her for this product, what we wanted to get away from was just we didn't want her kind of most prominent or visual form to just be a human. We wanted her to be something bizarre and like you've never seen this before. Just so when people, if nothing else, saw the cover, they'd be like, "What is that?" Mm-hmm. It heightens the mystery, and we sort of know that gods in D&D. There she is. Gods in D&D can look like anything.
There she is.
And so if they can look like anything, well, then they can look like a owl, goat, wolf monster. Why not? But there's something almost serene about the face of an owl.
Yes.
And so you're conflicted. On the one hand, they're clearly monstrous. On the other hand, there's a strange kind of alien beauty and a penetrating stillness to the character that I really kind of liked. This design was born out of a piece of concept art that Sean Wood commissioned, one of our art directors. If we had looked at the concept art and said, "Oh, that's stupid," we would have gone with something else. But on the strength of the concept art, really kind of sold us on what she is. And it's like, okay, she wears this shroud of snow over her back, which she can throw off and turn into wings. So she's always sort of metamorphosing into different things. But we wanted to create a couple or three iconic looks for her that were really distinctive, and you could instantly tell them apart, yet they're all the same creature.
It really works. It's almost an uncanny valley type of situation where the face looks human-like but alien at the same time, and the nature kind of feel of it, of it being a recognizable snowy owl or barn owl face is just, works on a multiple levels. I love the talons too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, she's scary.
You would not love them if you were this guy in the corner.
No. You know who that guy in the corner is? Do you recognize him?
He looks like Richard.
Yes, that is Richard.
Is that
Witters.
really?
Is that Richard Witters? Oh,
That's Richard Witters, our senior art director, rendered by Tyler Jacobson.
Good job, Tyler.
Amazing.
Yeah, frozen in the snow.
I feel so bad for him. Like this is a very pained, terrifying expression.
Yes.
Like it. Again, no pun intended. It gives me chills.
Yeah. No, Tyler did a great job, and
the wolves coming in the back,
showing Richard's best side.
His best side.
I mean, this isn't an expression that we're all very familiar with. Seeing Richard at work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, Richard Witters is another art director who works on D&D and has for many years.
Yeah, that was a fun little Easter egg. We didn't ask Tyler to do that. He did that all on his own.
Oh, I love it.
Because he and Richard are such good friends.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about Old Bitey?
Old Bitey.
The fish that's on the inside
on the title page. Yeah. So knucklehead trout are kind of a big thing in Icewind Dale. In fact, without knucklehead trout, civilization in Icewind Dale could not exist. Fishing is the primary industry of 10 towns. And knucklehead trout is what most people subsist on. And so there are 3 lakes that are full of knucklehead trout, but they are big fish. They weigh between 45 and 75 pounds each.
Oh my God.
So they can pull you into the water pretty easily if you're not careful. So Old Bitey is was one of the most tenacious and hard to catch knucklehead trouts, and had the scars to prove it, until one day, finally, he was caught and mounted on a plaque in one of the taverns. But then some wizard who visited Icewind Dale decided to play a prank and beguiled the fish with a spell, or sort of enchanted the fish with a spell so that it twitches whenever you get too close to it, like it's alive. And occasionally, if you're lucky, the fish will burst out into song. And when it does, it sings a poem, and the poem is in the book.
Are you serious?
Can you sing it for us?
Can I sing it for you?
There's a place I like to go, farther up the river's flow. Where it is, I do not know. Must be under all that snow.
Oh my God. Did you write that too?
I did.
Okay. So we need Old Bitey. We need this. I mean, I've seen these gag gifts at like Walgreens with the bass that would flap its tail when you walked by. But why do we not have Old Bitey? Why do we not have this?
I don't know.
Somebody please make us Old Bitey.
But there would not be Old Bitey without April Prime, one of our concept artists, because we tasked April with basically doing concept art for knucklehead trout, both male and female varieties, because they're slightly different size. And then she just threw Old Bitey into the mix. And as soon as we saw that little bit of the doodle down in the corner of her concept art page, we said, okay, that's in the adventure. Old Bitey is now a thing in Icewind Dale.
That's so great. I love that. April Prime also did the one of my favorite images in the book, which was the Chewingas gathering for a meal.
Yes, yeah. One of the quests, you meet some Chewingas, and they're having a little impromptu meal out on the snow.
Trying to pretend to be human.
Yeah.
Really? What do they eat? Do I want to know?
They don't really. They just make believe, because some Chewingas who live out in the wilds of Icewind Dale, they're kind of they might be they tend to just be these white, kind of blend in with the snow nature spirits. But the ones who've lived close to 10 towns sometimes try to emulate the people of 10 towns by making little garments for themselves, like little parkas.
Oh my God,
that almost look like they're almost look like little pine cones running around. And then they will do things like emulate behaviors of people that they watch. Like if they see some people eating by a fire, they will pick that up and then try to emulate that. They're very cute. They're wonderfully cute.
And they Chewingas we first met in the 5th edition era in Tomb of Annihilation in Chult.
Correct. Yes. And as a point of fact, they weren't originally slated to appear in Icewind Dale. It was during a conversation I was having with Todd Kenrick, where he brought Chewingas up and wondered if they were going to have a return. And I was working on Icewind Dale at the time, and I'm like, yes, they will.
It furthers that theme of immigrants, right? Like that.
Yes.
Icewind Dale is a melting pot of so many different places, including Chult. Isn't one of the 10 towns actually founded from Chulton?
There were Chulton settlers who sort of helped build one of the towns in the town of Goodmead, I believe. And then, so when they came, they probably had some Chewingas on their ships and in their caravans or whatnot. They may not have known it because Chewingas can turn invisible and hide in things like flowers and rocks and stuff like that. But the Chewingas would have no trouble as mutable elemental spirits of adapting to the cold climate.
I love all that.
Yeah.
And people will, get introduced, players will get introduced to many of the settlements in 10 towns and the people within. I love the quest structure in the first couple chapters.
That was based on positive reaction to the D&D Essentials kit. A lot of people loved the quest structures there because D&D Essentials kit is just a loose collection of quests with kind of a narrative through line that you can either pay attention to or ignore. The beginning chapters of Icewind Dale were formatted similarly, where here are a bunch of quests. The characters might only do a few of them, but that's fine because then, the adventure has great replay value and you've got lots of choice, and they've got lots of choice. One of the key things we wanted to do in the early chapters of the adventure was really let the players drive where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do. If they come to Bryn Shander and they get the Bryn Shander quest and they say, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to leave and go to Targos and see what's there. They can do that.
It's D&D.
That's D&D. And when the time comes for them to go off into Icewind Dale proper, there are quests there as well. The adventure tries not to assume, that the players are on a railroad.
Here's a question. This is Shelley. I feel like you wanted to ask something.
I really
want
to know what this visual is.
The visual?
Yeah.
The
What creatures are these?
Those are Chewingas.
These are Chewingas?
Yes.
Oh, they look different without their
They're without their garments. Yeah, I know.
Okay. They're very beautiful.
Aren't they though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what they kind of look like with their parka.
So cute.
Yeah, they are pinecone-ish.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask though is as a dungeon master, I play with a lot of players who have jumped into convention play or things that by necessity are a little bit more railroaded. And so when they're sometimes presented with, hey, what do you want to do? They almost always want me to tell them what to do in some way or fashion. So how would you introduce something like this that has a lot of choice involved? What advice would you give for a party like that?
So if they're looking for a more directed approach, the DM, of course, has the luxury to just use certain pieces. Like if the DM, like for instance, if I were DMing this adventure and I didn't know it as well as I did, and I wasn't able to internalize a lot of it, what I would do is I would just pick a piece of it. Like I'd say, okay, I'm going to pick the section in chapter 3 on Carcaloak, the goblin stronghold in the mountains. And I'm going to use the rumor from the rumors table or the quest tied to Carcaloak. And I'm just going to run that as a standalone adventure for like 4th level characters or whatever. That's part of the utility of this product is you don't have to use it all at once. And it says that up front. Like if you're just running a smaller experience or a more linear experience for like a group of new players who don't even know what choices they can make, then you can just hone in on one of the adventure locations and then make that the star of the night or the only place that the characters can go,
Yeah. I like that you say that up front in the text a lot more with sidebars and whatnot about how to run this adventure, including there's the Duergar Fortress where you're like, you can use this with the quests involved, or you could just use it as a map if you want,
Yeah.
because it's a cool map for a dwarf fortress.
Yeah, and I think as we continue to hone how we do adventures forward, we'll see more of that kind of gentle guidance or hand holding, particularly up front, because we can't assume anymore that our DMs just have that information internally in their heads, because our game is growing so quickly.
Yeah. And one of my favorite sidebars that I've seen so far has been around running horror and how to make sure with your players that they are aware of themes or content that they might find objectionable, and to have pretty candid conversations about that. And I thought that was really great to include.
Yeah, and we'll see that. We'll see more of that kind of thing too in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything.
Oh, okay.
Where we're because there's a big section there on helping to guide groups so that they have so that everybody at the table has a great experience, and nobody feels like they're being made uncomfortable by what's happening in the game. But yeah, and I mean, you could write an entire product just on that very topic. So what we have in the adventure is very light, but I think to your point, it's nice to see, and it's a necessary add.
Yeah, and it follows along that these adventure products that we've been creating are not, the 16-page adventure booklets that we used to see in the TSR era, where it's just the content and that's it. These are whole cloth, 256-page books or even bigger that could be used in any variety of ways, whether just as a gazetteer of Icewind Dale, if you want to just use this and write your own story, or be pulled apart with different adventures, or have these tools and these guidances for dungeon masters that they might not have gotten in other products.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing that we try to do in this product, and what we'll continue to do in adventures going forward, is just make sure that the DM understands that even though these are words on the page, they are not immutable. That the DM has the power to change anything, to change any encounter, to modify any encounter, to throw stuff out, insert stuff that's new. This is really like a launch pad for your imagination. After that point, what you do to the adventure, what you do to Icewind Dale, don't worry. It doesn't have to be canonical. It doesn't have to be any of that. Make it your own.
Yeah, that's the game. That's D&D to a T.
That's exactly.
Have you ever played in an adventure that you wrote, like, just for fun, either as the DM or the player?
Oh yeah. I played in Curse of Strahd.
Is it as a player?
Yeah. For instance.
Is that fun for you? Like, what is it like to, or is it nerve-wracking? Like,
it's not nerve-wracking for me. It's, if anything, it's probably more nerve-wracking for the DM, because they know that I know a lot of information about the adventure. And so they either have to change things to surprise me, or they have to trust that I'm not going to be a meta jerk and, ruin the experience for everybody else who doesn't know anything about it.
Can you imagine if you were like, oh, by the way, in this room, there's a vampire spawn. And
I could be that.
Don't open the door.
I could be that jerk, but I don't want to be that jerk. But I have fun because even though I may have been involved with it or written part of it or all of it, I'm always enchanted by the choices that everyone at the table makes that makes it just a completely new experience. None of my experiences running something that I've written on or worked on have been a faithful, version of the adventure because the DM always changes something, or bad rolls will always cause something unexpected to happen. So I'm still as surprised as I would be if I had nothing to do with it.
Well, how do you play if and not be not a jerk, but play like meta Chris, that how do you shut off that part of I know if I open this door, what's going to happen, or I go in this room, what's in here?
Usually what I do is I let other characters make choices that advance the party through the story. And then I merely react in the way my character would react then. So I am not looking for the secret door that I know is in the room.
Okay.
I'm letting the rest of the party do that.
Hmm.
And then if they find the secret door, I will go through it with them, and if they don't, I will follow them wherever else
So
they
you
go.
guys are so dumb, man.
No, I
and
won't
then
say
throw
that.
your dice out.
We gave you every clue.
God, it was like right there.
Okay, guys, we're approaching one of the rooms where the adventure says Strahd might be. So get your crosses and holy symbols out, and stakes and holy water.
I
don't
tend to blink a lot when I sense a secret door, guys.
Oh my God. If you could come up with a code to do that secretly to the players so the DM wouldn't know, oh, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Why do you keep rubbing the side of your nose, Chris? What's going on, man?
That's the snow. It's you know what the street value of Icewind Dale is?
Sometimes I'll just play a really dumb character, and that sort of absolves me too.
Yeah.
Those are always so fun. I love playing
they can
characters
be.
that are just like, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to do what you want me to do.
I either play a character who's too smart or very dumb. There's not much middle ground for me.
Play to extremes. I like that. So, yeah, go ahead. Did you have a question? Shelley?
No, I was kind of thinking about, we talked to two contributors that worked on the book with you last week.
Yeah, Celeste and
Ashley
Ashley.
Warren and Celeste Conowitz, and they were talking about the great experience they had in putting this project together.
That team, by the way, the first writing team that we put together, they were very conspiratorial. They got off on their own like message boards and were having secret conversations on the side and plotting about what to seed in their various parts of the adventure, stuff like that. It was great.
So now all of the writing teams don't always have that much interaction with each other?
It really depends.
That's really cool.
It depends on sort of when they're brought into the project, what they're tasked to do, stuff like that. But Celeste and Ashley and Anne and Michaela and Hannah and Morgan, they were all working at the same time on pieces that were meant to connect with each other in ways. So they kind of felt they had to be in pretty close contact. And as a consequence of that, we ended up with an adventure full of goats.
I mean,
Ghosts?
Goats. Bad goats.
How did that come about?
They just decided they liked goats. And so they kept plopping goats in their adventures. And they came to me and said, we need a mountain goat stat block. And I said, sure. What for?
You were amenable to this idea, the goats?
I thought it was a team building exercise.
I love this.
Yeah, so there are goats all over the place in this adventure. And I think the adventure is actually stronger for it. One of the joys, of course, with working with them and working with Chad and others on the book was these were all new voices for us. They had done work for third-party publishers and for Adventurers League and all kinds of stuff, but this was their first big hardbound D&D official book product, and I love having new voices, and you may even be aware on some conscious level, but the adventure is as different as it is and feels as different as it is because of those new voices in the book, and that's very exciting to me.
And I love that you worked with so many, like you said, the new voices. We've seen them in the community. We've seen the work that they've been doing on their own and for other publishers for a long time. But I love that, they're working on products that we're publishing. I imagine that getting a chance to work on a D&D product is probably a dream for a lot of people. So how
but you quickly discover too, it's scary because we've got a very rigorous process, and the demands of a D&D book are pretty high, significantly higher than anything else you're likely to work on D&D related.
Yeah.
So there's pressure.
Well, but how would what's good advice for somebody to get their work noticed, to get on your radar, or what's a good way for a freelancer to get their foot in the door?
I mean, one of the great things when I was a little whippersnapper and I was trying to get people's attention and show them that I could write and that I was professional and I could hit deadlines and all that kind of crazy crap. The vessel that I used, of course, were the print magazines, Dragon and Dungeon, because there was no internet back then.
Yep.
in the before times.
especially in Canada, the polar wastelands of Canada. So that experience now is basically emulated by the DMs Guild. And I think that is a great test platform for a number of reasons. One, you're free to express your creativity. Also, you get a little bit of money out of it, which is great. You can have people review it, which gives you some useful information. And you start to sort of understand the rigors of writing for D&D, because there are guidelines that you have to follow. You can't just put anything up on DMs Guild. There are things that you have to do to be successful. And so you're kind of learning how to jump through hoops, and you're making choices and decisions, and you're weighing your time and trying to create something that's going to be professional in appearance and resonate with people. And so you're kind of learning a bunch of lessons. And even though I don't have a lot of time to spend on DMs Guild, it's very easy for me to reach out to some people and say, hey, what have you seen on DMs Guild lately that's really, really cool? And they'll give me stuff, and then I can download it, take a look at it. Or I might just ask them, you've done you've edited a number of stuff, or you've downloaded a lot of DMs Guild stuff. Who's doing the best work out there? And I might get a name or two, and then sort of focus in on that and see what they do. Maybe reach out to them, ask them, would they be interested? Get a feel for who they are as a person. See if they're the type of person who can do the work that we need to do in the schedule that we need it done.
I always equate it to like short films or, short stories, right? If you're a fiction writer or a filmmaker.
Yeah.
In that you get all of the skills just on a much smaller scale, bringing something to fruition, and even more so with Dungeon Master's Guild, because you have to market it, and you have to do layout, and you have to do all of these smaller things that you don't necessarily think of when you're like, I'm going to make a D&D product, right? And so they learn all those lessons, and then so when you're able to approach them, they have some of that experience under their belt.
Exactly, and it all sort of interconnects. You realize that, this person that you've just discovered has actually done work with some other people that and, it can become very kind of wonderfully entangled in that way. And our community is very cohesive and supportive. Yeah. And, when I ask, if I were to send out a tweet and say, hey, whose writing do you admire? Who's doing great D&D work? The answers I get back are honest. They're pointing me in good faith to people who seem to be doing good work. And if somebody's name comes up 6, 7, 10, 20 times, that's a pretty good sign that maybe this is somebody we can work with in the future. Same thing on the editing side, by the way. Yeah, we're starting to use more editors now, and a lot of that's because they've been doing work in DMs Guild. So writing a D&D adventure is not like writing a novel. It's not like writing a screenplay. It's not like writing anything else, really. Yeah. And so that's why the DMs Guild is a great place to draw from. Right, because there hasn't been a pipeline, in the past, and now here it is. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Speaking of the community and how kind of tight knit it can be, the D&D celebration was just a smashing success, bringing a lot of those people together to do panels, to play in the sandbox of Icewind Dale that you created. Right. I played in Icewind Dale.
Yeah,
it was great.
You did.
That's right, with Brennan as my DM.
How did that go?
Swell. I played a tabaxi named Canatuna.
Ah, I love it.
Because I was showing off a new subclass from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, the armorer subtype of the artificer. And basically, if you have a cat in armor, I thought Canatuna would be a good name.
It's brilliant. Perfection.
Yeah. That's super fun.
Sort of my Icewind Dale take on Iron Man.
I like it. But Greg and I played in the Epic at D&D Celebration.
How was that?
That was really fun. Speaking of the knucklehead trout, we were at the fishing rally. And I also played a tabaxi. Her name was Hissy Elliott.
Is it with the... oh, my God. Really?
It wasn't a bard, though, right? I don't think you were playing a bard, were you?
No, I should have, but no, I was not. But I actually, I had to make a new character really fast because Chris Lindsay told me that Aarakocra weren't allowed with the Adventurers League rules. So I had to make a new character, and I totally made her wrong. And She had nothing. Like it was just like, I'm just gonna claw. Like I just couldn't do anything until finally, like hour 2.5 into the epic, people were like, I think you made your character wrong.
You might have some spells you could cast.
I think you might be able to like do a cantrip or something. Like,
No
really?
D&D characters this bad.
I know.
There's no bad characters, just bad players, Shelley.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the weird thing is
that's
in
not
our
true.
game, we had 3 tabaxi. So we all created
Ooh, a
our
litter.
characters independently. So we didn't have any idea what we were choosing until, everybody had already made their choice. And it just so happened there were 3 cat people in the party. I don't know why that is. There seems to be cat people all over Icewind Dale. How did this
It
happen?
does not seem like a good place for cats.
I gotta think they're pretty miserable up there.
I would think so. I mean, as a person who has a cat, I saw her try to go outside in the rain yesterday and she freaked out. So I don't think she'd like snow very much.
Not at all.
But
But they
she
do
sure
have fur.
likes-
That's good, at
they-
least.
They do have fur.
Yeah.
Knucklehead trout
multiple
might be
names.
delicious for a cat.
True. Yeah.
Absolutely. If it, a big fishing town, that might be what actually draws them there.
Oh, I should have called my character Can of Trout. I was dumb.
Can of tuna, it just has a better ring to it, I
You
think.
got that
Maybe.
visual.
Yeah. It could be like somebody's last name, like John Canatuna.
Hey, I went to school with the John Can
Oh
of
yeah,
Tuna.
you know the Canatunas?
The Canadian can of
I
tuna.
think Tony was in my grade.
Tony Can of Tuna.
Yes, Tony. Mama Canatuna's meatballs. Mwah, the best.
What? Suddenly they're all monsters. Oh man! Now I want to
these
start. Isn't
people.
there like it's in Zootopia or one of those Disney movies where like the Godfather analogs? I feel like you could do that with Tabaxi
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Super fun. All right. Well, I can't wait for more people to get into Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. And it has been a joy, as always, talking to you about what's in this adventure and some of the creative juices that went into making it happen. So thank you, Chris. Any last bit of advice or last details about this that you want to get out there that we haven't been able to in the past yet?
Nope. I don't think so.
We have completely drained this well.
This well is frozen over.
He has moved on
Yeah.
to 4 years from now.
Yeah.
It's true. It is a bleak, cold place. But
Bleak,
everybody
cold
should watch
place.
The Thing for sure, and as
Haven't seen
inspiration
it.
for
That's
running
just
this.
good. That's just good advice, general advice.
Yeah.
Watch The Thing.
And as I always say, I always like to watch the first season X-Files episode. That's a homage to The Thing as well. Ice, which has a whole bunch of callbacks.
I just want to give a shout out to this piece of art because this snow golem that Richard Witters did
Oh.
is cute and creepy at the same time in a way I can't articulate.
Also very relatable. Because I
Very
sort of
much so.
feel like that dude right now.
A little bit of inside information. When Richard first did this creature for me, it didn't look like this at all. It looked like this top-heavy snow monster that spent all his time in the gym. He had like pecs and huge biceps and shoulders that were like 8 feet wide and tiny little itty bitty legs. And
I know that guy.
I said to Richard, "You're Canadian. You know snow doesn't do that. It settles." And so I said, make him look more like a pear shape. And Richard said, "Oh, like me." And I said, "Yes."
Wow, Richard is all over this book.
Yeah. No, it was, and then he turned it around. The other thing he had eyes, like indentations for the eyes, and I thought, that as soon as you give a creature eyes, as soon as you take away its eyes, it immediately looks unrelatable and creepy. And so I said, "Richard, let's lose its eyes. Let's just have its mouth." And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do that." And then like two minutes, like 2 hours later, I get a new sketch. It's completely different, and it's this. And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so perfect." That's how creativity happens at Wizards. It's almost instantaneous in a way. It just like 2 people put their heads together, boom. 2 hours
And
later,
the eyes are gone.
The eyes are gone, and the creature's set. And this is what people are going to be using for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the
Creepy.
the story guide to concept art to story guide to the amazing team of writers to the layout that's done by the amazing team of Trish Yoakum and Kate Irwin
Tristan.
doing all the internal art direction. It really does become a team effort, and even more so with this product.
Yeah, and a lot of playtesters too. We playtested the crap out of this thing, and their feedback is we made hundreds, thousands of changes based on their feedback. Some small, some not so small.
That's awesome. I love that. That's been a tenet of 5th edition from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
D&D Next is making sure we have feedback, and what's really good about that is actionable feedback. It's not just like, I didn't like this thing. It's, why and how could it be better?
That is the key. We get feedback of all kinds, but it's the actionable stuff, of course, that we're most interested in getting and that we act on.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we got a lot of it. Some people said, this was so scary, but we like it.
But
That's a
I'm
good
still
sign.
crying.
Yeah.
I'll get over it. Don't worry. I'll be okay.
The Knoll Vampire is very scary.
Oh,
Good.
but the Chewingas. The
But the Chewingas and all the fun people of 10 Towns, just embrace them, love them as much as you can.
Yeah. I should also give a shout out to Kim Mohan, our tireless editor. He retired from Wizards of the Coast many years ago, but still continues to work on D&D, and he was the chief editor on this book and helped me out tremendously.
You got a good team.
His editing is vital to keeping everything on track.
Yeah. Mad skills.
Mad skills. All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you to all the people who contributed to this product. It really does look spectacular, and more people are playing it now, despite being isolated themselves in their homes. And I hope to start it with my my daughters. They actually have been seeing all the imagery, and they were like, "Oh, I want to do that." And I'm like, "All right, let's do it." So we're gonna be starting up something hopefully this afternoon. We'll see.
Oh.
Yeah. Should be
Very
fun.
exciting.
Yes.
Chris, if people want to pepper you with, Sean, but if they want to ask you questions about anything D&D related, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can send me a telepathic message, or they can contact me on Twitter at Chris Perkins DND.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Now we'll let you get back to work on the adventure product from 2023.
He's like, said that already? It's on 2028 right now.
Awesome. Always great to talk to you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.